have Brook.
Hey. I like this a lot better. I was at a thing on Friday where I couldn't see the crowd at all because the lights were really bright. So I could only see like 10 people in the front. I just assumed there were people in the back. But I was like, I don't know, I could be talking to just lights. Anyway, my talk is called Canary and the Internet Mine. I hope it'll become clear why in a minute. I'm Brook. I work remotely for a company in San Francisco called Turbine Labs. And this is sort of about what we do and then more generally about like why maybe you should do this sort of thing. So today we're going to talk about testing, massive failure, rollback, and how to make that a little bit less scary. I also have animations, but mine don't have hats or like walking. It's just little boxes that come in and out of the screen. So it's not as exciting, but I want to do WebGL now for mine. My boss actually made a version of the animation that I'm going to show you that had lots of bees, but our CTO said that it was a waste of investor money, so. Like literally we were in a meeting and he was like, I'm gonna go add bees to this. And then my CTO was like, you can't. And then like the next day he was like, here's some bees. Every time there's an error, there's a bee on the screen. When you come back to your screen, you got a lot of errors, your screen's filled with bees. My company is like half like women, most of us are queer or witches, and then the other half are dads, and the dads, they're dads. I love it. So I'm also going to share some ideas about like how to go forward from a current state that a lot of us are in, with like a monolithic setup, to something a little bit less so. So this is sort of just terms. Probably some of you are familiar with blue-green deploys or canaries. You guys have had probably time to read those. Move on here. So current state. You've got like a monolith. Let's say it's in Ruby or it's in, I don't know, whatever. Choose your flavor. Maybe it's in Node. Every time you want to deploy stuff, it's all in one giant thing. You're like, I'm in 1.0. I want to go to 1.1. And like that backend team's done, but the front end team's not done. And I want to like get it all out there. But I got to wait. And then when it gets launched, you have to like test it before that. It's expensive. It takes time. QA hates you. You hate QA. Like it's a gross feeling. And then things still break when it's out in public, right? Like we're all stoked because there's like a release, and then like maybe release engineering is chosen Friday because they hate ops, and then it breaks, and then they have to roll it back, and everyone loses their weekend, and like, everyone has a bad time. That's a bad state to be in. So then there's canaries. This is my roommate's cat, Prince. He was really excited because there were birds outside the other day, so I got this picture. He didn't actually get any of the birds because he's an indoor-only cat. But with a canary deployment, it's sort of like the canary in the coal mine that dies when there's like dangerous poisonous gases in the mine, except in this case, there's no bird. It's completely like vegan and cool because it's a server that lives on the internet, and when that server keels over or starts like spitting out 500s, or people are like, hey, there's random pornography on this like commerce website, you can actually like know not to ship that code because you've done a little test and not a big test. So it's a small portion of light traffic. You test it in production, and yeah, if it dies, don't worry. Like only a few people have seen it, and they may be sad, but like you have a lot bigger user base theoretically. It doesn't work as well when you have like 2 users, and you're like, well, good luck. Good luck, one person. So one way to do this sort of thing where both you can ship like individual services and like ship faster, ship cleaner, get everything out there where it's individually testable, is to break things up into microservices. And like if you're at a company, maybe you've done this, maybe you haven't, maybe you know like all the reasons why you would, but all the reasons why it would break, or like, oh man, like now we have 99 different services and they're all terrible. It's real. I think like Tesla has maybe like 5 for every single person at their company microservices, which is like, I can't imagine that. We don't go that far. Like stop short of that. But theoretically, the idea is each service is like a microservice. As it runs independently, you can launch it independently. You can canary test each one. And that way, like, you can get metrics on it. You can get a lot more information from these individual things, like your user service, your log service, or whatever, without having to like ship everything and then just kind of guess at like what's breaking it and having to like dig in. Yep. The other key here is like monitor things, like measure things, like measure early, measure often, and measure continuously. We are opinionated at my company about like what we measure because we think there's only a couple things you actually need to have, like latency and like response codes. I'll get into that in a minute. But the point is, if you don't measure, you don't know when things are broken. And so even if you use a canary, like that bird could have died like years ago and you would still be like, cool, everything's going well. Like I can still see the entrance to the mine. My users can go into the mine, but nobody comes back out. But like, I don't know. This is like, it's a bad idea. You don't want a pile of bodies. It's like, how do you get there? Because like it sounds hard, right? Like break it all up into microservices, or like, oh my God, like ship code really fast that's already kind of broken. Maybe, who knows? Because QA hasn't had like 2 months to deal with it. You get there with proxies and routing. So in order for you to do any sort of magic stuff where you're sending some traffic over here and some traffic over there, someone in network engineering or some like brave developer has implemented like a reverse proxy or something in the front that takes all the traffic and ships it to like Japan or wherever you have, right? But you can use the same sort of thing for things like blue-greens and Canary deployments. This is a slide from, I didn't actually match the colors, but this is from one of our decks. Anyway, so the customers go in, they hit your API. Your API is another like layer on top. That goes to a proxy, like our proxy, and then our proxy sends things over to the blue or the green or to the Canary and to the live version or whatever. This way you ensure that like no one's seeing what they shouldn't, and if you do things like cookie preservation or following different like other, you can have it do a lot of neat stuff around like hashes and stuff like that to tell it to go to this version or that version. And that way everyone sees what they should see. You get the testing of like one server versus all the servers, and then you can roll it back because all you're changing is like something on the back end with a proxy to say like, hey, go back over there where there's no dead bodies. This is the part where there's JavaScript. I have a demo. 3 Node.js servers. Hold on a second. I haven't used Keynote in forever. I always talk without slides, so this is a exciting and new challenge. All right. Boop, 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 boop. Can you see that? Maybe it's not very big. Why did that happen? There we go. Okay. Somewhere in here I have all of my commands. There it is. So for our demo thing, we just have a Docker package that like downloads it, sets all of the other stuff, and then runs. And I think I've already set everything, so it should work. Let's find out. So what this is doing in the background is it's got our like collector that looks for all of the like clusters and services that you have. We have a proxy service that's running. And then we have like 3 node servers, and one's like a yellow, one's a green, and one's a blue. And all they do is they return a color. So they say like, paint the square this color. And so if we then look at localhost, which I have to throw on the TV, there we go. Where is it? So everything's going blue. So this is your production environment. Like, hey, everything's good. All my users are seeing this like 1.0 code and everything's magical. So this is sort of an example of our deployment and like what it might look like if you say, created this kind of thing to have a reverse proxy so that you could like test. So this is like steady state, everything's running, everything's okay. And then you're like, I'm gonna break it out. So we have built some magical stuff to where like if you like commit code with like a production tag, then it'll like get it ready for release. So it'll say like, hey, do this. So I'm gonna like get like 1% over to green. So now it's launching, and it's pretty quick because it's just like built on top of Nginx, and all it is changing like couple other things. So we should see like a little bit of green here in a minute. You can see all the like requests going back in the back. Or theoretically, we should see some green. There was one? Okay. I can't see very well at this angle. This is like a thing I didn't realize is that, yeah, anyway. And then we can see some traffic happening. And let's say like, oh, things are going really well. So we can like take it up to like 10%, let's say. Then we should see some more green, right? And like maybe there's some errors. Like I've got like I can kind of like fake an error here. Boop, 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 boop. One more in here. I think that's it. Nope. This is hard to see from this angle. 1 second. Cool. Okay, so this is like what errors look like on our service. But same kind of thing. You've got it like going a little bit, but like it's not very good. You want to take it back. You can roll back to 0. Same deal. All it's doing in the back, if we look at like the route editor, is it's just changing like Nginx variables, which are very small and you can't really see them. But it's writing that out. It's always there. And then it's got like wait rules that say like, hey, go here, go to production, go to green versus blue. And then same thing if you want to like finish your release because you're like, hey, it's actually looking really good. I'm not seeing any errors at all or whatever else. Yeah, exactly. And like because you've already seen live traffic testing it, you're not like crossing your fingers and hoping. You're like, hey, we've been watching it for a while. The latency is better. Like everything's better. Response codes are better. And then you're like on a new version. So yeah, that's what it looks like. Like our stuff works with any microservice deployment. We've got like Kubernetes and like Marathon and like kind of whatever. But the whole point of this is like if you deploy all your code to a server, it's still hard to get a customer to actually see that code. It's hard to get that code out into the wild, as it were, without it just like falling apart and you ruining weekends. So instead of like ruining weekends and killing birds, use a Canary, use blue greens, and then rest easy and like save everyone a lot of strife. So anyway, thanks.